Welcome back to Leading Indicator, everybody. I am your host, Zaid Admani, and today we are talking to Mac, the executive chairman of ETHZilla. Mac, thanks for being on the show today. I'm super excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
You are joining at such an interesting day. Today, as we record this, the bullish IPO is happening. ETH is hovering near all-time highs, and ETHZilla also at all-time highs. Just walk me through what the last few days have been for you guys, pivoting from a biotech company into an ETH Treasury company, raising hundreds of millions of dollars, buying some ETH, seeing the price shoot up. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Just walk me through the last few days of what it's like running ETHZilla, and really curious to hear about the pivot to being an ETH Treasury company specifically. Why Ethereum?
Yep.
Anyways, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. All right. Well, the last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind, very exciting. My firm, Harbor Island, which is a private equity firm that also invests in digital assets, partnered with Electric Capital, a large digital asset VC firm based in Palo Alto, to invest in 180 Life Sciences and form an Ethereum Treasury company. And we've been thinking about this for a couple of months. And we put the deal together over the course of this summer, identified 180 Life this spring, started doing the work in the background on putting this all together. And then in the last 2 weeks, we raised a $425 million pipe offering, which was invested in by a lot of traditional finance investors, actually, and then a bunch of digital asset investors. We had a lot of people from the Ethereum community contribute capital to the deal. We put together a large DeFi council of most people who have built some of the largest Ethereum network protocols. And then we partnered with Electric Capital as the asset manager. And then subsequent to closing the pipe, we executed a $156 million convertible note that was cash collateralized to buy more ETH. And then immediately upon close, we bought a lot of Ethereum. So, we're sitting on over 80,000 ETH right now, continuing to grow the ETH pile. And the business model is, it's multifold. Number one, we want to accumulate a lot of ETH. We want to become one of the largest holders of Ethereum in the world. I think we're already.
Can I ask why ETH over Bitcoin, over Solana, some of these other assets out there?
Definitely. All right. So both Electric and Harbor Island are invested in a company called ETHZilla. And the thesis of the investment was to bring real world assets on chain using Ethereum, particularly structured credit, private equity, multi-trillion-dollar asset classes that can be brought onto the Ethereum network and made more efficient. And I decided years ago, after investing in Bitcoin and investing in Ethereum, that Ethereum was probably going to be the number one protocol to bring that can be used to codify assets all around the world and to transmit money. And so when I think about Ethereum, what I actually see is like what you're tapped into is global US dollar money supply. And the Ethereum network is a way for people to transact in US dollars around the world very efficiently. And why we're accumulating ETH, number one, is we think that Ethereum is going to be used for a plethora of different opportunities, both in the Ethereum network to generate yield, and then in the real world to codify these assets that create yield. And ETHZilla sits at the center of all these things. So at ETHZilla, we're building a business that generates cash flow from investing in the Ethereum network. Not just staking, but yield farming, tokenization, everything that you can do on chain, we can generate a high single-digit yield on our capital. So the more capital we deploy in Ethereum in particular, and we have to own that Ethereum to deploy it, we'll just generate more and more cash flow. And that's why we built this business. And the second component is we're going to be right at the epicenter of bringing real-world assets on chain through the combination of tokenization, codification, and investment in ETHZilla. So I'll stop there, but that's why Ethereum and nothing else, because we think it's going to be probably one of the most important assets in the entire world.
Okay, but so I'm curious about the tokenization element and the yield maxing. So you mentioned both those things. I think there's a little bit of sour taste in people's mouth when they hear the word yield and crypto from all the stuff that was happening in 2021, 2022.
Yep.
Is that the business plan right now, though? Like, I understand you stake Ethereum, you get a yield. That makes sense. When I hear yield maxing, though, I start hearing black box. what's the strategy there when it comes to yield maxing? And is that how you guys differentiate yourselves compared to all the other ETH treasury companies out there?
Well, number one, Electric Capital has been in the business for over 10 years. I think they're one of the largest digital asset managers in the world. They've got a huge bias towards Ethereum, and they have a team of people that just focuses on generating on-chain yield using Ethereum. And so we're partnering with that team that all they do at a base level, node validation, right? Like that's what's generating your base yield on Ethereum. But then there's a whole bunch of very simple over-collateralized lending protocols, yield farming, token staking that can be done where you're taking very little risk but generating, pretty high returns, like high single-digit returns on the Ethereum network, and the opportunity is pretty big. I mean, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars in total, and so that's what we're tapping into with a team of people that's very experienced and has a huge long track record of doing this.
Gotcha. So it's not just price appreciation, right? Like that's what the Michael Saylor strategy is. Bitcoin's going to be worth $1 million one day. Yeah. This is more like, okay, you have the price appreciation along with like you're generating yield from this asset that you're accumulating, and you're able to squeeze more and more yield out. Everyone knows, most people are familiar with the base yield stuff. You just kind of tap a couple buttons on your Coinbase app or whatever, and you generate 3, 4, 5%. I forget what it is right now, but you guys are able to go above and beyond that because of your partnership with is it Electric Capital, and then use yield farming and things like that. I'm curious about the tokenization element of it though. Like you mentioned that you expect more things to get on chain with tokenization. Yeah. Is that stocks? Is that bonds? All right. Talk to me more about that, because I'm really curious to know, what's the point of tokenization when it comes to like stocks and bonds, when I can just open up my brokerage app and buy stocks and bonds there? Why would that need to be tokenized?
Well, number one, we're less focused on stocks and bonds because you're right. They're liquid markets. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel with that. If people want to tokenize their equity, they're perfectly welcome to do that. And
well, like Larry Fink talks about, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has talked about it a couple times, and I'm just like, what's the point of that when like it's already very liquid? You press a couple taps and like you get your money or you're invested.
I tend to agree with you on that, and that's why we've been focused on the private side. So the private credit market is a multi-trillion-dollar market globally. It actually takes like 30 days to settle a loan sometimes, bank to bank or transaction, point to point. A lot of paperwork, faxing, ton of back and forth. And if you bring this stuff on chain, you could settle these loans and settle both private equity transactions, but also private credit transactions in hours. On level 1 or level 2, and you could tokenize the individual assets. And what's interesting about this is a lot of these things end up getting fractionalized on Wall Street and repackaged anyway. So why not make it easier and faster to take them apart and package them up so that funds can, like closed-end funds can buy them, versus having to send around all this paper and literally wire money around. And that's what's interesting, because once you bring that on chain, it becomes very easy to generate yield, real world yield on real world assets that are tokenized. And
because I guess you're providing a service, or you're providing liquidity, you're providing you're creating a market, and you take a cut from that market, and that generates more yield on your assets.
That's one way to do it, or you can invest in the assets too. You can hold the tokenized assets and collect the yield in USDC.
Gotcha. As someone who's crypto curious, that's what I would call myself. Invested in Ethereum here and there, have some. I'm trying to understand like the value that someone like ETHZilla provides compared to just buying Ethereum in the public app or the Coinbase app, or just buying a Ethereum ETF.
Yeah.
Is it purely that yield maxing expertise that you guys bring that allow that differentiate you guys from the boring ETFs?
Well, when you buy an ETF, you're paying the ETF manager a fee.
Correct.
When you buy ETHZilla, we're actually generating free cash flow. So you get that stream of EBITDA from owning the business, but what you're also investing is our ability to continue to raise capital to acquire more ETH. And I think what you're going to start to see is a lot of ETH consolidation in the market between the large players in the Ethereum Treasury marketplace. And
Interesting.
I think that's what you're buying when you're buying ETHZilla, is our ability to continue to accumulate a ton of ETH and generate cash flow on that ETH. And that is a big differentiator, because if you think about the actual business model, I mean, it's an amazing model, right? Like, you don't need a lot of people, you don't need a lot of OpEx to generate incrementally more EBITDA on this fixed cost base. So for every $1 billion of capital deployed, you can generate $50-60 million of EBITDA. Like, that's extremely powerful without scaling up your cost center. So you have a business that starts generating billions of dollars of free cash flow as you bring more capital into the system.
Gotcha. So you make an interesting point about the consolidation. Do you just see that happening just across the board as more and more of these little, treasury companies pop up? I feel like I see a new press release every other day. This company, whether it's in the U.S., Canada, everywhere, they're just popping up and they're buying ETH, and then the stock shoots up like 600% overnight. You're thinking that like these are going to be consolidated, and you're going to have like maybe a few giant ETH treasury companies, and you're able to deploy the capital with more efficiency. You're able to, generate yield more efficiently. You're able to generate more returns. Is that what you see happening in the next? Well, what do you think in the next 6 months, 12 months? When do you see all this stuff just kind of playing out? I'm obviously no one has a crystal ball. But I'm just kind of curious. Well, you're on the inside.
My crystal ball is like, I do think you're going to see consolidation ultimately in this space, but I think we're at the point in the cycle where you're actually going to see a lot more of these get issued. They're going to be of different quality and different scale. What they say they're doing versus what they are doing are probably two different things, but I do think that a lot of mass is going to get generated at the top of the system, like you've seen with some of the other large Ethereum treasury companies, because they have access to the liquidity in the marketplace, which is what we've done with ETHZilla as well. And then you're going to see the holders of Ethereum globally, like if you look at the strategic Ethereum reserve, I think that, it's like less than 6% of total Ethereum is now held by these treasury companies. I think that total percentage of Ethereum owned is going to rise very, very dramatically as more capital is generated inside these vehicles. And then I think you get to a point, we're talking maybe a couple of years down the track, where ultimately there's consolidation that occurs, and you've got some super scaled Ethereum holding companies similar to what you've seen in the Bitcoin space.
Do you envision a future where you move beyond just Ethereum, as there's Solana out there, there's a few others out there, and they offer similar, yield and stuff like that? Do you see yourself, ETHZilla, or do you see yourself moving beyond just Ethereum and trying to dabble into that, or are you just kind of laser focused on one?
We are laser focused on Ethereum.
Well, good, because you changed the name to ETHZilla, so you really can't.
We want to eat as much Ethereum as you can possibly eat in the next couple of years, be one of the largest holders in the world of it, and then deploy it. And that's the business model. And we're gonna bring it into the real world. I mean, I think that's the most important part of it. And it's got applications off Wall Street as well. Real estate markets, asset markets. I think there's a lot of ways you can use it.
So the plan right now, you guys started buying. I think your average is $3,800 right now.
Right.
You guys have 82,000 ETH and counting. Is the strategy to buy every day? Do you have a strategy of like buy the dip, or is it? Do you have a certain strategy right now?
Yeah.
Or okay, go ahead.
For sure. You saw on the balance sheet, I think on the last report, we had like $225 million of cash available. We deployed the initial $300 million and change into ETH. As we bring more capital in through the ATM, we'll use that capital to buy ETH. We're always going to keep enough reserve that you get a big dip, you can step in and buy a lot. But we've been in the market every day buying ETH. That's the strategy right now, is just keep averaging. We think it's going a lot higher.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating what's happening and how fast it all is playing out. Do you think there was a moment over the summer? Do you think it was maybe the regulations? Like, is there a moment over the summer where that sparked this interest in ETH and contributed to the ETH rally? Because it really just accelerated over the last 2
honestly,
months or so.
I think it was the United States government really opened up the spigot on digital assets earlier this year, and that's when I got really interested, particularly in Ethereum, because of all the applications of it. And then with the government getting behind it, the U.S. government, it allows all the use cases to be unlocked. And that's why I think you're starting to see so much interest in Ethereum. But then I also think what's happening in the background is the transactional velocity on Ethereum is going up. And because of that, a lot like credit card fees or, it starts to snowball, and it's actually going to push the price up because the usage of Ethereum is growing. The absolute requirement to have it, it's like digital oil.
That's true, and I think a lot of people think back to the time in 2021 when people were just transacting in Ethereum for these NFTs and gas fees were going crazy.
Yeah.
That didn't really end very well. So what do you think is like? So, but you're saying that this is now going to be used for like actual legit stuff and not just pictures of a rock. It's going to be used for actual assets, like potentially real estate and things like that.
I think we're past the pictures of a rock phase and bidding up NFTs, and I think you're actually going to start to see it be put on title for houses and aircrafts. I mean, it's going to be used to actually transact large things that have complicated chains of title that are regulated because it's basically perfect for that. And so, you bring a small percentage of the loan market on chain. What's Ethereum's total market cap? Like $550 billion right now. I mean, all these other markets we're talking about are like multi-trillion-dollar markets. So you only need small percentages of them to move on chain, and suddenly you've changed the transaction volume 5x.
That's very true. I want to pivot just a little bit, and I'm just curious to know, what is it like running a company that has like their main business, I guess, their legacy business, I should say, I think is iGaming. I think it was a biotech.
Yeah.
What is it like on a day-to-day basis running that? But like the bigger goal is this buying ETH strategy. Like that's got to be so interesting, not just for the employees there, for you guys. Like it's just, what is that like?
Well, on the biotech,
how do you stay focused? It's like everyone's, everyone's working at their day job, and like the stock is going crazy. Like that's got to be an interesting feeling.
Well, I think it's number one. It's good for the employees to have the stock do well, right? Biotech business, we'll continue to like put a little bit of incremental capital into it, but the primary focus from here on out is the Ethereum business. And I just joined the company this summer, so
gotcha.
We've pivoted to focus completely on Ethereum, and our team is focused on that. And then the legacy biotech research team is still focused on those neurology drugs, but like that's a pretty long cycle, and it's a much smaller percentage of the business as a total. So obviously, all this capital has been deployed into Ethereum, and that's basically our focus going forward.
Gotcha. Are you going to do the road show where you show up at multiple public investor meetings and try to like make a pitch for them to buy into Ethereum as well? Kind of like what Michael Saylor did, and just be like, hey guys, you guys are missing out. This is what we're seeing.
I mean, I think to your question, part of this is an educational process about what is Ethereum. There's the whole world of DeFi that gets it, but most traditional finance people don't really understand what it is. And so a big part of this job is actually explaining Ethereum at level 1 and then what you can do with level 2. And it just is going to take time, a lot like what Michael Saylor did. And that's why I think we're in the early innings.
That's a good point. I forgot to bring this up earlier. I think the news that put you guys on the map this past week was Peter Thiel linked entities took a 7.5% stake in the company. That's a huge name. He's also involved in a company that's IPOing today, Bullish. Yeah. What is his involvement? I guess say about ETHZilla and kind of legitimizing the company in the space.
Well, Zaid, he came in on the pipe alongside a lot of other pretty high-profile Silicon Valley and traditional finance investors. So, we're super happy to have him, and he's among really good company with other people kind of similar stature that created that $425 million pipe alongside all of us. So, he's an awesome investor, but I think it's a testament to his belief in what we're doing too. Like he heard the whole pitch, and his team made the call. Oh, yeah. I think people look at this and they say, this is a really unique structure. You've got a super experienced team of people from both the traditional finance side that know how to run large-scale capitalization programs, and then you've got this really experienced DeFi team on the yield side, and it's just different. And I think it attracted a lot of capital, obviously.
Yeah, totally. One thing that I know we're jumping around here, but you mentioned about the cash flowing nature of ETH and how you're going to be generating yield. Do you see that as potentially going as distribution to the shareholders? I'm not sure that's happening right now, but do you see that as distribution, or you're just going to use that money to then keep buying more ETH?
The latter. Yeah, I mean,
The latter.
we're a growth company, so we're going to
For sure.
redeploy all our free cash flow into more ETH and more ways to generate more yield. ETH is the consumption of ETH is going to become so high that the natural growth rate of 3.5% on ETH, I think, relative to actual consumption, is going to make it possibly like a deflationary asset. So we want to accumulate as much of the supply as possible. Similar to, I think everyone understands that there's 21 million Bitcoins and we're down to a million left to go to mine. ETH, different setup on the network, but the supply consumption is rapidly going to occur. And I think you want to be at the center of that network effect by having as much ETH as possible.
Gotcha. We'll end with this. So changing the company's name from 180.
ETHZilla.
I mean, honestly, I think it's brilliant. What was that your idea? What was that pitch like when you guys were kind of brainstorming this in the boardroom? Like you're like, hey, we're gonna change the name, and I'm just walk me through that because I'm just so interested.
I'll give you some color, and I've got to give credit to Avishal Garg at Electric, because he came up with the idea of ETHZilla. We were actually looking at tickers that were available on NASDAQ that had the ETH, and then there were a couple available, and then ETHZ was available, and so he said, what if we become the ETHZilla? And, we all laughed about it at first.
So you backed into it based on the ticker symbol. I love that.
Well, hey, that kind of works. You become the monster that eats all the ETH. and that's what we are.
I love it. When I first saw it, I was like, is this like an NFT project or something? And then you look into it, it's like, no, these guys are legit. They just raising a ton of money, and they're doing what you guys are doing. So I think it's brilliant, especially in today's world where attention is everything, and the easiest way to stand out is when you have a unique name like that. Yeah. And I just love the story how you guys backed into it, because ETHZ was available, and then you're ETHZilla. Yeah. I mean, are you guys going to do a full-on logo redesign and everything? I mean, I'm sure you guys got to be working on all that.
Well, you should check out the website. I think we've got a pretty cool setup on the website, and a lot of fun things you can do on social media with ETHZilla. And everybody should just know that ETHZilla is always in the ETH marketplace every day, chomping away.
Well, I appreciate you, Mac, hopping on today. Really fascinating to see what's happening right now in the crypto space, especially with Ethereum. And hopefully we get to do this again soon when you guys are, just rocking and rolling.
All right. Would love to do it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
All right.